Are you getting bored of using the same old major and minor scales? If so, it's time to break out the modes. Let's get into the video. What's happening, everybody? It's Rex Mays from the Mays Music Academy, where I put out instructional videos on music theory, composition, and digital audio production to help musicians just like you level up your music making. In this video, I'm going to teach you all about the modes of the major scale. So what's the difference between a scale and a mode? Let's break it down. A scale is a sequence of notes with a distinct start and end. Now a mode, on the other hand, is just a permutation of a scale where you shift the start and the end points of that scale. Now before we get into the music theory, I just want to point out that the concept of using modes has been in music for a very, very long time, dating all the way back to ancient Greek music. And then in the Middle Ages, they also used the concept of modes a little differently to generate the pitch material for a lot of different music styles, most notably in Gregorian chant. And also a lot of folk music styles from all over the world use modal flavors that we're going to talk about today. So the sound of these modes has got sort of an ancient, a very aged feel, but also a very human cultural feel that we associate with folk music. And that relationship that the modes of the major scale have with medieval chant music is the reason why they're often called the church modes as well. So just like anything that's been around for thousands of years, the way that we use modes in music has changed quite a bit over time. Now in this video, I want to focus in on the modern usage of the modes of the major scale, but I'll have other videos where I dig a little deeper into the more traditional usages, especially where you see it in Gregorian chant and more older Western music styles. So to understand the modes of the major scale, you have to understand the major scale itself. And the major scale is just a simple pattern where the intervals are whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. 2 wholes and a half, 3 wholes and a half. In this video, I'm going to focus in on using C major as our primary example because it's the easiest major scale on the keyboard because it's all white keys starting on C. It's just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and returns back to the C. All white keys. Now building the modes of the major scale is super easy. All you have to do is start on a different note other than the main first note of the major scale. So with the C major scale, if you start on D or E or F or any of the other 7 notes and go from that note up to the octave, you've created a mode of the major scale. These modes have different names depending on which scale degree you start on, and these names originate all the way back to that ancient Greek music that I mentioned earlier. The mode starting on the first scale degree, which is the same as a major scale, is called Ionian mode. Starting on the second scale degree is Dorian mode. Third scale degree is Phrygian mode. Fourth scale degree is Lydian mode. Fifth scale degree is Mixo-Lydian mode. Sixth scale degree is Aeolian mode. And the 7th scale degree is Locrian mode. If we use C major as an example, you can see as we go from C all the way up to B how the order of the modes works. So we start with C Ionian, then we go to D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixo-Lydian, A Aeolian, and finally B Locrian. Now as you've probably figured out already, each of these modes has a slightly different ordering of whole steps and half steps that are just shifted from the regular major scale. Now because these modes have different sequences of whole steps and half steps, they have different collections of intervals, and they range from the brighter intervals that are the major and the augmented intervals to the darker intervals, which are the minor and the diminished intervals. So when you order the modes from the brightest in terms of intervals down to the darkest, you start with Lydian as the brightest, and then you work your way down from Lydian to Ionian, Mixo-Lydian, Dorian, Aeolian, Phrygian, and finally Locrian is the darkest of the bunch. Another way to look at it is that each mode either has more of a major sound or more of a minor sound with some slight variations. I'll get into the specifics of each mode in separate videos, so in this video I just want you to understand that there's a range from brightness to darkness, more of a major or minor sound for each of these modes. A different way to build modes other than just using one major scale and just working each scale degree is to start on the same tonic, the same starting pitch, and then using the patterns of whole steps and half steps to build them up from there. Here's an example of all the modes built on a C natural. As you can see, there's a different set of accidentals for each mode, and as you can probably tell, each mode is kind of more similar to either C major or C minor, and each one has a distinct slight variation from those 2 basic scales. Another important thing to consider when using the modes is how the harmonies within the key change as you shift from mode to mode. As you can see, when we build the triads off of each scale degree within a given major key, each mode shares the same 7 triads. However, because the ordering is different, each of those triads has a different function in each of the modes that impacts how we use them harmonically. So if we use the key of C major and look at the C major triad as an example, in C Ionian, that C major triad is actually the 1 chord, it's the tonic triad. However, in F Lydian, that same C major chord is actually the dominant 5 chord. And then if we look at G Mixolydian, that same C major is actually the subdominant, it's the major 4 chord. Now that C major triad is used in every single one of the 7 modes of the major scale, but its function is different depending on which scale degree it happens to land on. But what's important to note is that that C chord is always a major triad as long as you're in that same key. So why is it important to understand how these triads change function as you shift from mode to mode? Well, the answer is because when you set up a different modal sound, a different modal flavor, when you use these different triads, even if it's the same key, they have a different functional sound. They push and pull in different directions, and it helps you kind of shape your different harmonies, your different chord progressions, depending on the mode in all kinds of different ways. So let's look at a chord progression that uses a D minor triad, followed by a G major triad, then a C major triad, and finally ends on an A minor triad. So if we analyze that progression in C major or in C Ionian, you have a minor 2 supertonic chord, followed by a major dominant 5 chord, followed by a major 1 tonic triad, and then you finish off with a minor 6 submediate triad. Now if we analyze that same exact chord progression in D Dorian mode, all the triads have much different functions. So that D minor is actually now a minor 1 tonic triad. The G major is a subdominant 4 chord. Then the C major is a 7 subtonic triad. And then finally the A minor is now the minor 5 dominant triad. So now that you understand how the major scale relates to each of its modes, and you have an idea of how the different harmonies within the key change function as you shift from mode to mode, now you're ready to go ahead and start using these different modes in your own music. So that really brings us to the key question, which is why would you want to use modes in your music? Well, like I said at the beginning, maybe you're just bored of the normal major and minor key sounds. Maybe you want something brighter than major or darker than minor. Maybe you want to conjure up that sort of age that comes with using modes that harkens back to medieval music with Gregorian chant or even a lot of different folk styles. Ultimately, understanding the modes of the major scale just gives you more tools in your toolbox as you're trying to compose and create more variety and deal with different kinds of compositional situations in your music. So that's all you really need to know to understand the modes of the major scale. If you got good value out of this video, I'd really appreciate it if you smash that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. So I have a couple questions for you. First, which of the modes is your favorite? Which one has that special sound that you enjoy listening to in your favorite pieces? And which one do you enjoy using in your own compositions the most? And second, are there other music theory topics you would like me to cover in future videos? I'd love to hear all your responses in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Now get out there and start leveling up your music making. I'll see you in the next video.